and welcome to the first Citizen Media Expert Interview Series. Ashoka Changemakers, with the support of Google, launched Citizen Media, a global innovation competition to find solutions that use media to catalyze participatory citizenship. Media connects people to their world, gives voice to their dreams and ideas, and equips them with knowledge to improve their lives and the lives of others. But even in this age of pervasive media, millions lack access to the most basic information tools. The Citizen Media competition seeks to change this reality. In this series, we'll connect with media experts from around the world to explore major trends, obstacles, and what lies ahead. We are delighted to be speaking today with Juliana Rotich, Executive Director of Ushahidi. Juliana, thanks for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I wanted to start by asking you to describe the landscape you have been working in your own terms. How has Ushahidi emerged? What did it emerge from?
Ushahidi started in end of 2007, beginning of 2008. What happened was there was a contentious election in Kenya. There was post-election violence, and what we saw with our own eyes was vastly different from what was being reported by mainstream media. So the first prototype of Ushahidi, the goal of that was to collect information and visualize it so you could have an idea of what is going on where, and for that information to come from any device, be it mobile with SMS or web reports, because many of the co-founding team were bloggers, so we wanted to also bring in the view and the voices of bloggers, but also to include views from other people around the country. So that first prototype was done to collect different voices to be able to say this is what's going on. And since then, we've grown into not-for-profit tech company, and we make software that allows for people to share the narrative of what they see in their own words.
How do you see that emerging in different contexts? Is there a difference between the various regions that Ushahidi is operating in?
What is different is in how people use the platform. So we've seen different use cases from crisis mapping, even, most recently with the Mumbai blast, a gentleman called AJ Kumar. He's been using the Ushahidi platform for various things. He was using the platform to actually crowdsource information about power cuts in India. So the idea of citizen media it can encompass many things. It can encompass use cases from political upheaval to elections to crises, like I mentioned, but also to fun stuff. So the idea of sharing, information can also be shared that is of a different use case than you would expect. The idea here, and what we work very hard to do, is that we can have software that is easy to use, free, open source, and available, so that you can figure out what context works for you best. I'll give you one exciting example of how these tools have been used, and the context has been pretty interesting. Two of them, actually. The first one is around the Russian fires. When the Russian fires happened last year, a writer called Alexei and Gregory, they created the Global Voices Online. They used the platform, set it up, and got it going. But what was different was they used the platform to connect people who needed assistance to those who wanted to provide assistance. So the platform became it's not just about surfacing what the problems are, but also trying to collectively find a solution. So that's also been really interesting, and that is, in my opinion, a very empowering use of our platform.
Do you see any of these uses coming out ahead of the game, developing more than others? I know you mentioned the use of these tools in crisis situations. How do you see that developing?
Crisis situations present a particular challenge because you have a lot more participation because it's a flashpoint event and you have a lot of attention. So more often than not, you end up with a lot of reports. So that presents a problem, but also an opportunity because, for example, with the Haiti earthquake, we got more than 8,000 SMSs. We started iterating very fast and trying to create a workflow. We later, worked with Crowdflower to set up this crowdsourcing system to gather information via SMS and provide an interface for people to sort through it and help with the deluge of information. So flashpoint events, they present us with an opportunity to quickly iterate on the software and to make it serve that particular need at that time, and also points to opportunities of leveraging data science to at least use algorithm before a human person has to sort through the information. Mm-hmm. So it's a double-edged sword. They're typically very, very sad situations, but it also presents an opportunity for us to make sure that we're trying to make the tools better, and we're doing that in various ways. We're currently working on a project called Swift River, and its precise goal is to help deal with the deluge of information that you will get most often with flashpoint events like crises or other big media type events that are covered by a lot of media outlets or have a lot of public attention.
Absolutely. So you mentioned Swift River. Tell us a bit more about how that platform differentiates itself from CrowdMap. What are some of the differences there?
So Swift River is it's still in development. The key thing to remember about Swift River is it's not an application, it's actually a platform. When we do launch it, you'll be able to see we will have an application that can also be tied into your CrowdMap deployment or your Ushahidi deployment, and it'll give you an interface. One of those applications is called Sweeper. So when you have all the text messages, for example, that use one hashtag, you can follow a specific hashtag, and you can have an interface where you sweep through the data, or you can have several people help you sweep through the data and quickly indicate which pieces of information you'd like to push into your CrowdMap and which ones you'd like to pre-sort to get rid of first, because some of them could just be retweets and not particularly useful information. So the idea behind Swift River is trying to find the signal from the noise of all the data that you get from the social web and even from SMS.
So CrowdMap has been around since 2010, if I remember correctly. How has that been used in the last year, and is it something that has incorporated itself into the revolutions that we've been seeing across the Arab world?
So CrowdMap, it has grown exponentially, really. We started in August of 2010, and right now there are over 15,000 various deployments. So we saw it being used for the tube strike in London. We saw it being used for the Australian floods. We've seen it being used actually for fun. I think there was a papal visit when the Pope went to visit Europe. That was quite a hilarious deployment. So there's actually peoplevisit.crowdmap.com. So it's not always just about crises, it's also about some fun stuff. There's so many various use cases. We have a research team and a netographer who are looking into its usage patterns. So we haven't really, we're still in the process of analyzing how it's being used, but what I can tell you is that the use cases vary, and the geographical spread is also very wide because it's being used in over 128 countries. So it's quite a deluge of information that we have to sort through. In terms of how it specifically was used in the Middle East and North Africa, actually the Ushahidi platform itself was used by an organization. If you check out u-shahid.org, formulate.org. There's a gentleman called Farid Bushra and Kamal. Their organization, DIFC, has been experimenting with using the platform not only for gathering information about the revolution that took place, but also for more of the long-term issues around the referendum and the elections and sort of the path that Egypt is taking from post-revolution to the hard work that they're doing into making their country truly democratic. So that is one example. CrowdMap was used, but not. If you remember, the internet was actually shut off at some point during the revolution. So in that case, the offline means of organizing became very, very important. So it's a mix, really, I think, when it comes to using these tools. So you still need to have the tools online, yes, and that they're only 10% of the solution. You still need to think about the offline component and the other things that you still need to do in order to get information into the deployment and to make that information useful via alerts back to the users. So there's still a lot of work to be done.
So if I hear you correctly, there's this need to balance the online tools that we're developing and using in the international context and at a local level with the ability to take that activity and take that energy to the ground and to more traditional forms of organizing.
Absolutely.
Right.
It needs to go hand in hand because at the end of the day, it's about change, isn't it?
Right.
It really is about change. Yes. And we can do what we can do online, but really at the end of the day, it's people on the ground coming together, whether online or off, but together using those tools where you're using various tools to coordinate, to schedule, and then to actually enact a series of events to make a change in your society. That absolutely has to include offline engagement.
Is there a difference between how the international community has responded to your work with the reaction on a more local level? Local being in the communities that are actually using the platform or using the tool, as opposed to organizations such as the World Bank or the United Nations or any other global development organization.
Actually, we've seen interest from both quarters. I'll give you an example. The United Nations Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, UN OCHA, actually contacted Patrick Meyer, our director of crisis mapping, and requested our help in setting up the Libya crisis map. So there is acknowledgement from big organizations that crowdsourcing and having this link to the public as a source of information has some value and is something to pay attention to. So we're working together with the World Bank on several projects around the world, one in China and one in Kenya. So we've gotten interest from the big development type organizations, and locally, again, it goes down to how you implement and how you deploy the platform. It became very useful with local government when the team in Japan, the OpenStreetMap team in Japan, led by Hal Seki and his team, they used the platform to crowdsource information about the Japanese earthquake. That information became useful, and even the local government went ahead and partnered with Hal Seki and his team to use that deployment in order to gather information and to make that useful for the community. So it's been sort of a mix of interest, and we're really happy to say that our partners, our deployment partners, and organizations like the UN, they're really seeing the potential in pretty much closing the feedback loop, because sometimes when you have these, so for example, when you have big data pronouncements about poverty or about water or about whatever, what does that mean on the ground? How can you find out? And one of those ways you can find out is through crowdsourcing and trying to engage with the public in a way that they can interact back.
So I'd like to switch gears briefly and talk a little bit about challenges. What are some of the challenges that have faced crowdsourcing technologies?
The biggest challenge, like I mentioned before, is the deluge of information, because when you start listening to the crowd, a spur of information can quickly become a flood, particularly if you have a major event. So the biggest challenge is how to sift through all of that data to get usable and perhaps actionable information. That is the biggest challenge, and we're trying to handle that in different ways. One, like I mentioned through the Swift River project, but also recommending, if you go to our community site, there are different recommendations on community.ushahidi.com. There are different resources available for people using our software to crowdsource with recommendations on things to keep in mind. So the first challenge is data deluge. You can just have too much data to sort through, and you absolutely need help, either with volunteers or specialized software in order to handle the incoming information. The second challenge is around basically handling the inflow of volunteers, because sometimes you'll have volunteers, right, but then you now need to be able to organize those volunteers in a way that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And this is where our partnership with the Standby Task Force has been really fantastic. The Standby Task Force is a network of crisis mappers and people who would just like to help, and they've been really, really fantastic with helping them, AJ and Anand, with the Mumbai blast deployment. So it's also about figuring out volunteers who have some experience with sorting through data and can actually help during times of crises or when somebody is crowdsourcing. So there are many more challenges, but I would say those are the two big ones that people need to be aware of. Oh, I'll add one more.
Sure.
When you crowdsource information, particularly in the developing world where you are gathering information from SMS, for somebody to send you SMS, that typically costs money. So you need to think about when you're sending them back, because you really do need to have an acknowledgement of the SMS that they've sent you. So the more successful your deployment, you could end up, you also need to start thinking about how to finance the SMS component of crowdsourcing, because that has a cost implication. When you engage with the public via SMS, it'll cost them, and then sometimes it'll also cost you to engage with them, unless if you've talked with mobile service provider and get a bulk SMSing provision that would allow you to do that for free. That's some of the work that we're working on. We're trying to talk with different mobile operators to see whether they can provide certain short codes for people to use for certain projects. But these are long-term challenges that Ushahidi as an organization is looking at working with different stakeholders and dealing with.
A lot to think about there, and thank you for sharing that insight. These are things that are critical for us to think about when we're moving forward with these types of tools and engagement. So Juliana, are you all doing anything in the application field? There's iPads, iPhones, a lot of mobile technologies emerging. How are you all working with those developments?
At Ushahidi, we believe in, because our foundational innovation is actually incorporating the mobile phone, with SMS reporting. So we've extended that to mobile applications. In the iTunes store, you can find for free the Ushahidi iOS application that allows you to search for deployments within, let's say, 50 miles, 100 miles, 500 miles. This helps people to find information about how people are crowdsourcing from wherever they are. And that application will work on your iPhone and also on your iPad. And in the Android store, We also have the Ushahidi Android application that works much the same way. And if you like those applications, we can work with you to white label them. So that's a service that we actually provide with our developers. So mobile is really important now, and it will continue to be important in future because the next generation of people getting online, some of them, their first experience will be on the mobile phone, and we are also working hard to create applications that can work on simple phones that work that are popular in emerging countries. So Java applications that can also work on BlackBerry. So mobile is really important to us at Ushahidi, and for those thinking about citizen media, they also need to incorporate a mobile strategy in their work.
So finally, as you know, Ashoka Changemakers, with the support of Google, is seeking innovations in citizen media. I'm curious, what was your reaction when you heard about this global innovation competition?
I think it's good to have these types of competitions because, as you may know, Ushahidi got its first start from winning an innovation challenge. It was the Net Squared Mashup Challenge and also the Knight Baton Journalism Awards that are given every year. So for people with an idea and are just starting out, I think it's really important to have these types of challenges so people can have that seed money, as you would call it, to try out, to prototype, and to see where they can take this idea. So I think it's really great to see the type of innovations that would come out of this particular competition.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, Juliana. We really look forward to continue seeing your incredible work and the impact that you all are having on communities around the world.
Thank you very much.